Hello, my name is Katherine Stepanek, and I am a scenic design grad student at the University of Tennessee. In 2019, I had the privilege of working with the design team for Detroit 67 at the Clarence Brown Theater. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from Knoxville, Tennessee, the native lands of the Yuchi and Muskogee Creek people, as well as the Cherokee Nations. I would also like to acknowledge the indigenous stewards of this land, both past and present. As you know, Detroit 67 is a powerful piece about the racial injustice in our system, both in the 60s and today. It is still a current problem, which is why this play is so important in the current political environment, including the Black Lives Matter movement. One of the unique challenges I faced working with Detroit 67 was the fact that it was a Black play with Black characters, written by a Black playwright, directed by a Black director, and here I am as a white artist. I needed to figure out how to navigate the race relations between all of this Black power movement and me being a white individual. I had to acknowledge the fact that I did not know everything. I, in fact, knew nothing when it came to this. Everyone else was going to know better. So I went ahead and did so much research. Every piece of research that I had was based on the facts of that particular house. 2 blocks away from that house, everything was going to change. If somebody came to me and said, I had a house back in the 60s in Detroit, I can show you my basement. Almost definitely that was going to be the wrong basement. It was going to be in the rich neighborhood or the white neighborhood or 4 blocks away, and it was not going to be accurate. In order to make this story hit home with this audience, it had to be accurate. We wanted it to feel like they were actually in this particular basement, in this particular neighborhood. It had to be as real as possible. And as the white artist, I could not assume anything. I had to go and research every little bit. What was their sink going to look like? What was the rug on the floor? What kind of posters did they have on the wall? What were the walls made out of? Every single piece of research helped me build this world where I originally didn't know anything, because it's not my life. It's not my story. I had to assemble the facts in order to create a world that tells somebody else's story. One of the unique challenges as a scenic designer for a show like Detroit 67 is how to work with all of the dichotomy of skin tone. You have everyone from Dee Dee, who played Shell, and her gorgeous dark skin tone, to Brittany, who played Caroline, and her beautiful light skin. So how do you have 2 such drastically different tones without popping the lighter colors or fading back the darker colors? We had to create a world where they would be on the same plane, where there was not an emphasis placed on either one and you did not lose either one. Scenically, we did that by creating this back wall. Architecturally speaking, at the time it would have been drywall, so trying to be as accurate as possible. Most of the set was drywall, but we pulled in a little bit of brick and cement to try and bring in some color. And then we also had the actors scribble all over the walls like they did when they were children. We brought in concert posters, we brought in magazine clippings, we brought in album covers and things like that to try and cover the drywall. Because they're a bar, they would not have had just drywall in their basement. They would have tried to decorate it with things, and with things that they could afford. So it would be things that they could rip out of books or find on street corners or find when they go to these concerts. And because music is such an important part of the show, having all the decor surrounding the music worked. So we would come in every day with the actors on the set, and we would start covering the wall with these posters that were a muted tone, which would help push the dark skin tones out without having them fade into the brown drywall. And that helped push them onto the plane. Along those same lines, we had Jordan Vera, who was the lighting designer, who would light the wall, specifically the wall, not the actors, so that the actors would pop out and create a little bit more of a 3-dimensional space. Then we also had John Merritt, who was the costume designer, who designed his color palettes for the costumes by skin tone. So you had the darker skin tones would have been a more vibrant outfit. If you remember, Bunny was in a brilliant red outfit, but then you had Caroline, who was a much paler costume color. That way she didn't stand out any more than her vibrant skin tone already did. And together, the three of us were able to create a visual world that we could play with without losing any of the characters. We created a cohesive environment for this world of Detroit 67. One of the more unique aspects of this design is not the set itself, but the surrounding wall that encompasses the audience that goes around the set. And this wall is based off of the 8 Mile Wall in Detroit, which runs along 12th Street, right across the street from where Shell's house was. So she could see this wall from her house. This wall was originally created as a segregation wall. It separated the Black neighborhood from the white neighborhood. And this wall over time was covered with graffiti meant for the civil rights movement. It was covered with Martin Luther King Jr. quotes. It was covered with the Black fist of power. Every inspirational message you can think of ended up on this wall. So we wanted to incorporate something that is both a dreadful part of our history, but also a symbol of hope, and bring it to the set. And then we tied it into the modern issues. The artwork itself, the graffiti, is inspired by an artist, Rayford Lyles. He has a series called Riot, which encompasses the protests in the 60s in Detroit. It is a beautiful work that depicts the police brutality, the chaos, the absolute havoc wreaked at that time. And he brings it all with such emotion into his artwork that we wanted that to inspire our graffiti art. And so we wanted to surround the audience with this so that they could get up during pre-show, post-show, and intermission and go and look at this wall and see things that, yes, connect to the play and the movement at the time, but also connect to now. One of the most important aspects of the scenic design for this show was the immersive quality. We wanted the audience to feel like they were in this basement, that they went to Shell's bar, that they were involved in this story. The more an audience feels pulled in physically into this world, the more important the story becomes to them as a human. And this is a story that they need to understand. It's so important. We did this through a couple different ways with Detroit 67. Because it's in the carousel, which is in the round, we're able to actually push the space into the audience. So we had the stage protrude into the audience. It got so close that they could reach out and touch it. They felt like they were physically there. We also had this ceiling piece that would come over and arch over the audience. It would interact with the actors. They were able to dance around the poles. They could reach up and hit the ceiling. It was over them and brought in a sense of doom a little bit. It gave you a little bit of a foreshadowing that something wasn't right, but it also was able to reach out over the audience enough that it would bring the audience into the vortex of the set so that they were sucked into paying attention to this story. You physically could not look away from their world. Working with the sound designer, the lighting designer, we were able to bring in this immersive set and bring in this environment to encompass the audience, which created a world for them that was unique, but also very important and brought it home. It's important that this story and stories like this are hitting home right now because it is such an important part of these daily lives and the Black Lives Matter. The Clarence Brown produced this show at a very poignant time, and artists will continue to make work that involves stories that need to be told, that should be told at this time, that tells different stories, different lives that we have not heard yet. Thank you for listening.